Okay, so hello, welcome everybody. The BC grain producers are excited to host Maria Reschke with the Farmers Information Services. Maria has lived in Port St. John for 16 years and has been with FIS for nearly a year and a half. She has 7 years experience working directly with landowners impacted by oil and gas activity. And I'll pass it over to you, Maria.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So maybe I'll just go straight into sharing my screen and then I'll show you my presentation. I want to make sure I'm in the right spot. Okay, you see that all right? Yep. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Kristen, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. I really appreciate that. A little bit of an overview. If you look at my slide there, I'll give you a bit of an introduction, and then I'd like to show you my mission statement and outline of services for the FIS, common concerns that I've heard over the last year and a half, website and information I have available, and then I'd like to highlight some negotiation tools just as one of the pieces of what's on my website, and then I'll leave you with my contact information. So going straight into a bit of an introduction, Kristen's already started off, but yes, I worked for the BC Oil and Gas Commission for 12 years, with the last 7 years in specific working directly with landowners regarding the engagement process. And that gave me some really good insights into what are some of the items that landowners need in order to negotiate or to navigate through the oil and gas world. So the mission statement is to equip landowners with the information and resources needed to achieve more positive discussions with oil and gas industry. There is really a daunting amount of oil and gas information for landowners to sift through on top of managing their own agriculture business. So the goal of this office is to make that information more accessible, provide input and direction on how some of the different resources can be accessed so that it brings more benefit to landowners, and also just to help them feel confident in having the conversations with oil and gas industry. An overview of the services that we provided with the FIS, it's at no cost. And it is intended mostly to encouraging positive discussions while helping landowners access opportunities that are available to them, providing information on regulatory requirements and processes, directing landowners to information and resources that will just better help them inform their decisions, helping them develop strategies as they go into discussions with oil and gas companies. And then there are times where really their service, they need to access professional services that are beyond what the FIS can do for them. So just tapping them into those sources. Oops, pardon me. So the contract is directly managed by the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries. The committee I report to has representatives from the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovations, and at least one landowner representative. There is a BC Oil and Gas Commission representative that sits in for parts of the meeting just for hearing updates and information that's relevant. They are not involved necessarily in the decision-making portion. The funding, it's set up under the Canadian Agriculture Partnership with the following agencies, right? The three icons you see at the bottom. So the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries, Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovations, and the BC Oil and Gas Commission those are the three agencies that are contributing dollars at this point. And then just a little bit of an overview over the last year and a bit of the types of concerns. This doesn't mean that it's limited to this, but this gives you an idea of some of the concerns that have come forward. So reasonable compensation to discuss with industry, or how to arrive at fair numbers. A lot of folks just don't know where to start on this. Like, how do you start having those conversations with companies? Rent renegotiation, you know, how, if we feel we're not getting fair rent, how do we get that process going or have those discussions? Outstanding lease payments, you know, landowners often stuck on what's the process to make sure the companies are paying us. Dormancy and orphan well processes. Many people will know that over the last couple of years, there's been some federal stimulus funding that has kicked some of the dormant and orphan well processes into gear. And so that's just brought forward more questions on that as well. And in regulatory processes, that's a little bit more general, but just, there's a few questions that have come in that way. Impacts of a new facility on a surrounding community. So if a community is not familiar with or hasn't had that type of activity before, then those types of concerns would come forward. Rights on lease agreements when land is bought or sold. So either people that are wanting to sell, they've contacted me with some information, or people looking to buy within the PRD. Proximity of sour gas activity to home has been a concern as well. And then noise and odor impacts, ongoing impacts in that way. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a look at my website. This is the home page, and I'm not live on website, so this is just a picture. But on that page, you can scroll down, it takes you to more information. But right at the top on this one, it does have I've covered up a little bit with my circle, but you can see my phone number, email, and then the hours that I'm available. So those are right at the front. And also what I've done is I've broken down the information that's available to 7 basic topics. And I'll take you into that a little bit more, but these are right on the front page that you can access them. Also up on this, our information tab, you can go into that, it takes you directly into it. And then there are 2 different search spots right on this home page. So I feel that there's good access right from that page. What I wanted to do, so where this hand is, the hand and the circle aren't on the actual website. So what I want to do is take you into this right of entry and compensation. So under each of those categories, I've outlined sort of an overall description of it, and then it takes you down into the different articles. And as you would scroll down, you'd see more of them. Today in specific, I wanted to show you the map of lease agreements. So this map is available on the site, and you can see all these different pins on it. They're colored by year of agreements that have been signed. And the agreements that I have received, the information on the agreements, I've received them from the Surface Rights Board, and I can only include what has actually been passed along by companies. They are supposed to be within 90 days of signing a lease agreement, submitting them. There are still gaps. And I have had some landowners, when they have seen that their information is not on the map, they have shared it with me, and I don't include names of companies or landowners, but would love to be able to fill in the gaps more. So if there are landowners who would like to share their information for the benefit of other potential landowners who may need that information, I would certainly be glad to accept that information. So I'll just take you a little bit further into it. So let's say we go into one of these pins. This would be the next spot. It would take you a little more directly. So this pin in particular here, here's how the information is included. So we've got the location, and here it tells you it's a well site with access and ancillary. So it's got it by the township and range, and then also lats and longs, depending on how you want to look stuff up. It tells you the size of the site, and I've included both permanent and temporary information. Sometimes that helps for landowners working through this process. And then, so that's under this location tab. And then if we go to the lease info tab, that would take you here. So this one tells you in specific, it's a lease expansion. And this expansion was agreed on in August of 2016. So originally, the landowner would have been receiving $7,925 for their annual rent. It's probably a little small, I apologize. It's about as big as I could get that. But I would really encourage you to go take a look on this site, and you can, click on the different pins to see more of the information. So it does tell you that their previous rent was, previous to this negotiation, the lease expansion negotiation, was $7,925. Once the expansion was complete, then it went up to $9,900. And that first year, there was an initial payment of $8,800. Now I'll go into that a little bit more I should say at this point too, this information on this map, I consider it somewhat one-dimensional because it does need to be considered together with, and I'll take you to that. I have included a guide to negotiating lease agreements on my site. And it maps out the different aspects that a company would discuss with with a landowner. And that all needs to be considered when you look at those numbers on that map. They don't tell the whole story. So if you take a look through the guide to negotiating lease agreements, and it explains, it gives a better definition of compulsory aspect, right? The company has obtained subsurface rights. So now they have the right to go in and access it. So the landowner, in many ways, they're being compensated for the fact that there's little choice for that. And then there's value of the land. A company won't be paying outright the full value of the land because they're not purchasing the land, but it's a portion of it. So it's important to understand how that works. Loss of use or profit. So let's say a well site is going into a portion of land where there's maybe what would normally be canola that would be planted there. So a landowner would take into consideration what have been the profits from that over the last 3 or 4 years. That would be the type of information they'd want to collect in order to present to the company. This is my loss of use. Or if there's a portion of the land that they can't get to, or even the turnaround of the field, that sort of thing. And then general nuisance and disturbance. So this one, it's a little harder to sift out. There's tangible and there's intangible. So what is generally described as tangible would be anything that can be monetized. So if there's a cost to the landowner, even to have the weeds cleaned up, or what are some other ones, but intangible would be more, you can't put a price necessarily on if you've got bright lights from a drilling site shining in your bedroom windows and you can't sleep at night. It's hard to put a dollar value to that, or odor or noise. So those are the intangibles. So that's a bit how those are separated out. So that's an overview of the 4 main aspects that are considered in this guide to negotiating lease agreements. It is available on the website. And I would strongly encourage, when you're looking at the map, use both those tools together. And what I'd like to do, here's an example, and I'm going to say right from the get-go, these numbers are not, don't take them as real numbers. They are examples only. Just to give an idea how a worksheet, a company might present this worksheet back to landowners. And this breaks down then those things that we talked about. So they've pulled apart the loss of profit and severance, and then there's the nuisance and disturbance. And then temporary workspace would have a little bit of its own dollar value put to it. And as you can see here, I highlighted, so the first year payment is going to be higher. They include more of those values in it. And then from the following year and on, it would be, there are fewer of the aspects that are taken into consideration. And then also, maybe I'll say at this point, rent can be renegotiated every 4 years. And there are forms through the Surface Rights Board that need to be submitted. And it's an application to get that process going with conversation with the company. Or, I mean, you could first try this conversation with the company. If that doesn't take you anywhere, then you go through a more formal process. And this kind of takes me to the end. This is my contact information. There's my phone number, 250-329-4686, my email. There's the website. I also have a Facebook page. Any links or likes or anything like that would help to get the word out a bit more, just so that other people have the option to tap into this information. I am available Monday to Friday. If those times don't work for someone that needs to, meet with me, maybe they work those hours themselves, I can always prearrange a different time to meet. So that's my really quick overview. I don't know if there are questions that either of you would like to present today, and then otherwise I'm open to emails too if there are further questions down the road.
I have some just quick questions. So is this service just for agricultural landowners or anybody who has oil and gas activity on their property?
The parameters of the service are oil and gas within the PRD. So it's not necessarily just on your land if it's within your community. Like some of those concerns that I was outlining that I've heard from, these are people who don't have the activity necessarily on their land, but they're quite impacted. So it's, as long as it's oil and gas within the PRD, those are the main parameters. So does that answer the question?
So if I live on a road and there's a substantial amount of oil and gas traffic going to a lease that's adjacent to my property, what kind of services would you be able to help that particular landowner with?
Well, it would be primarily, it's to find the right information, tap them into the right source of information, how to raise their concerns, which agency would they be connecting with, that type of thing.
Okay. And this is, parameters are just oil and gas. I mean, there'll be, going forward in the future, there's potential for more activities than just oil and gas. Like there could be solar farms, wind farms, highway expansion projects and stuff like that. Is the parameters of your scope just continue with oil and gas, or is there potential to offer services to help landowners with any negotiation?
Well, that would be up to the committee that I answer to.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, they outline essentially what my mandate is. At this point, it's set as oil and gas. You know, it will be interesting, right, to see over the next few years how our resources, how that changes. So I don't know that I should speak for them, but yeah. It definitely a good question, right? Because there will still be impacts to landowners based on that.
How long is your funding for? Like, is it year to year that you get funding for? Or do you have like a 3-year mandate? Or
at this point, it's 1-year contract. So I've just signed for the next year. So as of April 1st, so I've signed a contract for a year. So
then that would be until April or March 30th. 2023 is how long the service would be for.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now as far as like crop loss, do you guys have any information regarding what is a acceptable amount to ask for crop loss? Because I mean, crop loss can vary depending on like if you're growing canola versus if you're growing, like how do you guys help the landowners navigate through that crop loss component? Because it can be a huge dollar value when you get into those high value crops.
Right. Well, and the bigger part would be for just helping landowners figure out how to do their own homework too, right? Because they would have to bring their values to it as to what their particular piece of land generates for profit. So the decision would be based more on that. And so within that guide to negotiating, I've included just some, you know, kind of like homework for landowners to do to prepare for it. And I have pulled together a little bit of information and handed that off, like when I've had a request, pulled together what I can, provided that to them so they've got some comparisons. But then I also have to explain, like, it also depends on how the land is being used. And so not every negotiation is the same. Yeah. And so it's helping them understand where it's the same and where it's different. So it's very much on a case-by-case basis.
Have you seen in the current negotiations that are going on, crop values have gone up astronomically over the last year. So how are oil and gas companies navigating through these times of like going from $10 canola up to $26 canola? Do you feel that the oil and gas companies are fairly compensating landowners based on the market values and market fluctuations?
Well, I would say because oil and gas has been very quiet this last year, there have been a lot fewer negotiations. So it will certainly be interesting. And it's important then for landowners to bring those dollar numbers to the negotiation table. And I guess that's more my role, is just to help them understand what information they need to collect. Not so much, I'm not a great holder of values of crops, right? You folks would probably be more of a resource in that way. You're probably more tapped into that. My goal is more to give the landowners the tools and the information that they need to or even work with them. What do we need to do here then to help you get your numbers together?
Okay, so that would be a service that you'd offer. So say a company proposes that they're going to put a lease site on my property. I don't know where to begin as far as, and so you'll basically walk them through what the different steps of the negotiation are and just help with the compilation of the information.
Correct. Yeah. Like if I have some examples, this is where it's really valuable if people share their information with me. Of course, I don't ever share names, but if I have more of those comparisons, just to show them, you know, this is a situation that's quite similar to yours. These are the differences. And then that's how I bring it to them so that they can make their decision. And I've sat down with some folks and, you know, looked through numbers that they're considering and just give an input based on other examples that I've had. But, you know, I'm not an advisor.
Yeah.
I can provide some suggestions. I am not an advisor.
So if it came to a situation where a negotiation is starting to get heated or emotional, because they tend to, would you be able to step in as a mediator, or that you would recommend somebody to step in as a mediator?
Probably more recommend.
Okay.
I'm there to provide support. I'm not a representer. There to just provide support so they feel more confident in the conversations they are having. But I would certainly work with them if they needed to find a mediator to come into that conversation.
Okay. So say I bought a quarter land, within a couple of weeks of buying the land, oil and gas company approaches. What would you say is the first step that a person should take when entering into a negotiation?
Well, I would say if they're coming to your door with an offer for you to sign right away, and I do have on my website some tips for when the land agent comes to you.
Okay.
Take your time. Don't feel rushed. You know, they'll probably try to provide a nice sweet deal if you sign that day. Don't feel obligated.
Yeah.
Accept the information, let them know you're going to consider it. And then that's where you go back, start crunching your own numbers, calling the FIS, whichever, right? And then start talking it through. But just for landowners to understand, they have some options to stop and consider what's all being offered, not to feel obligated to sign right away.
Okay, that's great advice.
Yeah.
How has the uptake been for your services, and what can we do as the BC Grain Producers Association to assist you in getting this information out? Because I've been on both sides of the negotiation in my previous careers, and I know that getting the information out is critical. What can we do to help you?
You know, just getting the word out, understanding though, we're in sort of a strange time right now with oil and gas. Yeah. I do believe though, it will start to pick up pace within the next year. Mm-hmm. And so just so that folks are aware that this service is available to them, you know, I've appreciated, you've already done some Facebook page likes, so I've appreciated that. That type of thing, you know, if there's links that can get my website linked to people, just word of mouth, that type of thing, I think is the best thing, just so that landowners know that when things do start to pick up, there is a resource for them. And if I don't necessarily have all the answers, I'll just help them look for the answers or get them going in the right direction is definitely the goal.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I do think it's really critical that we get information out to people and that we're sharing that information. I think it's great to share the information because there's power in numbers in more ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I absolutely appreciate that. It's been good to start working with you folks on this. It's great.
Well, I don't have any further questions for you, Maria. Just thank you so much for the services that you offer and taking the time to meet with